بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So this is lesson 12 in our reading of Risalat al-Khushu, and in this lesson we are going to be looking at the Fatiha again from a slightly different perspective that Imam al-Khadimi will present. We've taken a lot of detail regarding the meaning of the Fatiha in the previous lesson, and so this lesson will be relatively shorter than usual because a lot of what Imam al-Khadimi mentions we've touched upon in some way or the other in lesson 11. So Imam al-Khadimi begins by stating وَفِي تَفْسِيرِ نَيْسَابُورِي أُسْلُوبٌ لَطِيفٌ أَيْضًا, that in the tafsir of Naysaburi he presents a very beautiful manner of explaining the Fatiha and its wording. And so he says يلاحظ في قوله الحمد لله الإيجاد والتكوين والإبداع, that when one says Alhamdulillah, one should think about this act of coming into existence, coming into being, going from a state of non-existence to a state of existence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with. ويلاحظ التربية في مصالح الدنيا بقوله رب العالمين, and that one should think when he says this phrase رب العالمين, the Lord of the worlds, the tarbiyah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extends to created things in terms of the benefits that they accrue in the dunya. والتربية في المبدأ بقوله الرحمن وفي المعاد بقوله الرحيم. And you look at tarbiyah, this idea of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taking us from one state and gradually lifting us or directing us to another, more perfect state. We look at it from its initial point, and then we look at it in terms of its goal or end point. And over here, before we actually get into this, let's read what Shaykh Keller has to say about the meaning of Rabb al-Alameen, because again, he explains it quite beautifully. He says, how do they, meaning created things, though finite in themselves, win unto infinitude? So how do we finite contingent beings, how do we win unto infinitude? How do we reach that level of eternal salvation in the next life? And the answer the Shaykh gives is by being transformed and refined by a process of uplifting their possibilities through the pure grace and mercy of the Divine, signified by the Quranic verse immediately following the first Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. The word Rabb, very imperfectly rendered here as Lord, was originally a mastar or verbal noun in the ancient Arabic language that denoted educating, raising, or uplifting, in the specific sense of taking something at the imperfect level it first was, and then bringing it by degrees to the desired level of perfection, also connoting the love, tenderness, and solicitude with which this normally occurs. Then, in the next paragraph, the Shaykh mentions the Rabb al-Alameen, or Lord of the worlds of beings, in this sense uplifts his servants by directing their wills and lives to the larger context in which they are embedded, away from attachment to things, or considering themselves things, or believing that things bring about happiness, to the meaning of things. What are things for? And of course, things are ultimately for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is from Him we come, it is to Him we return. Our actions are from Him. We do things because He desires that we do them. We avoid things because He discourages us from doing specific things. And so this is the broader context, the larger context, and the meaning that underpins all things, or should underpin all things. And so over here, this is what Rabb al-Alameen means. And so when Imam Naysaburi mentions وَالتَّرْبِيَةَ فِي الْمَبْدَأِ بِقَوْلِهِ الرَّحْمَنِ, that when you look at this idea of tarbiyah, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directing the will of creation to something higher, trying to make them realize the larger context in which they are embedded, to try and make them recognize the deeper meanings underpinning this life and their actions, the beginning point of this, the first initial point in which this act of tarbiyah occurs, this act of cultivating and nurturing the human being, this is something that we should think about with the phrase or word Ar-Rahman, because as we took previously, Ar-Rahman denotes that mercy that forms the ontological bases of our servanthood, namely our very existence. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ar-Rahman to the believers and to the disbelievers. And His mercy pervades all things, because through that mercy, He has brought the cosmos, all of created things, from a state of non-existence into a state of existence. That is the first step. That is the mabda over here. وَفِي الْمَعَادِ بِقَوْلِهِ الرَّحِيمِ. And then we think about the end point of this journey, of this process of being guided on this specific path, of being cultivated degree by degree by degree. And the end point is indicated by the word Ar-Rahim, a mercy that is specific to the believers, a mercy that is specific to the next life, a mercy whose full manifestation will only occur in the next life when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His generosity and through His mercy, blesses and grants specific individuals from creation an eternal reward in paradise. And so when we think about these terms, this is what we should be thinking about. Ar-Rahman as that mercy attached to us that begins our journey in this world, in this realm, and Ar-Rahim as that mercy that attaches itself to us in the next world if we are successful. ويلاحظ نقل الأرواح من عالم الأجساد إلى عالم المعاد بقوله مالك يوم الدين. And then when one says مالك يوم الدين, one should think about the transference of our spirits, of our arwah, from this realm of bodies to the next realm, in which we will return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we should think about when we state the phrase مالك يوم الدين. Then he says, فإذا انتفع المصلي بهذه الملاحظات صار من أهل المشاهدة، فيقول إياك نعبد بالخطاب الحضوري، لأن ننقل من دار الشرور إلى دار السرور ولا بد من زاد وخير زاد العبادة. And so when the one who is praying, when he fully benefits through this act of reflection, through this act of recognizing what the meanings of these words that he is saying, what they are expressing, the realities that they are expressing, then he becomes from the Ahl al-Mushahada, the people of witnessing, people who can witness Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who truly recognize Him. And at this point he says, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, you alone we worship. Now what's happening over here is, when you look at the first part of the Fatiha, it's all third person. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. It's all in the third person. Then suddenly you get a change, you get a shift in which you start addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. And so a lot of the ulama say that this early portion of the Fatiha, what it's effectively doing is, it's readying you to enter into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the way you're entering into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is you first recognize who He is. You recognize His existence, you recognize His sifat, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. You recognize that He is the Rabb al-Alameen, the Lord of the worlds. And Lord, of course, we have said, does not really capture the full depth of the meaning of Rabb. And then Maliki Yawmiddin, the idea of a return, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the master of the Day of Judgment. You recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when you truly recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you enter into His presence, and then you have this sort of direct, intimate conversation with Him, a direct address in which you say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ, I have recognized you, and now I am saying that you are the only being worthy of worship. بالخطاب الحضوري. And so what we are doing is effectively now we are transferring ourselves, we are transferring our souls, we are consciously removing ourselves from this worldly realm and going into a higher realm of presence. And in order for this to happen, in order for us to move from the Dar Shurur, which refers to basically the abode of evil actions, to Dar Surur, which is the abode of where we have joy and happiness, we need some provision for this. And the best provision for this is ibadah. Ibadah is our provision in this journey from this world to the next world, from the realm of the temporary to the realm of the eternal, from the realm of mere bodies to the realm of souls and light and angels and prophets and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our provision over here is ibadah itself. Then وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ, and you alone we seek aid from. لأن الذي نكتسب بقوتنا وقدرتنا لا يكفينا فإن السفر طويل والزاد قليل. And so he says, then we say, we seek your aid. Why do we say this? What do we think about when we say this particular phrase? That the things that we can accomplish and gain through our own power, through our own abilities, is insufficient, because the journey is long and the provision that we have is little. And at the end of the day, everything that we do, as we mentioned in the last class, is through the aun, or the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our worship can only be made possible through the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us this provision, which is ibadah, to transfer from the journey from this world to the next world, then this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's act of generosity and His giving. And we should recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of all things, that nothing moves on this worldly plane or in any plane, anywhere, without His power and without His will and without Him permitting that thing to happen. And so this is what we should imagine when we say وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ. ثم إذا حصل الزاد بإعانته تعالى فلا نطلب إلا الهداية إلى صراط المستقيم. And then when we gain this provision of worship through the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should not seek anything but guidance itself to the straight path through صراط المستقيم. ثم لا بد لسالك مثل هذا الطريق الطويل من الرفيق والدليل دل عليه بقوله صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. And then for the one who is traversing this journey, who's taking on this journey, which is all of us, that any person who is taking on such a journey, such an arduous and long and lengthy journey, that he needs a companion and he needs a guide. And so when we think about this phrase, صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم, we think about the prophets and the siddiqeen and the martyrs and the righteous, that these are people who travel with us on this journey. And these are people who are guides for us on this journey. And this is who we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us on the path of these individuals. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Not the path of those who have been misguided. لأن الحجب قسمان نارية وهي الدنيا وما فيها ونورية وهي ما سواها. Because the thing that can envelop one can be of two types. Either something fiery, which is the world and what is in it, or something illuminated and light-filled, which is everything other than it. And so when we think about this journey that we're on, we think about whose footsteps do we want to follow, and who do we want as a guide, and our need for a guide. And these are the righteous Muslims that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed, and the prophets who He has sent wahi to in order to guide all of mankind. And so this is again just simply another way of looking at the Fatiha. And once again, we should try to make it a habit to learn the words of the Fatiha, their deeper meanings, and make effort to be conscious of what we're saying within the prayer, because this is the only way we can really cultivate this attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the prayer, khushu in the prayer, reverence for Allah, and pray in a way that resembles the prayers of the early Muslims, the Sahaba, and others. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us tawfiq in this. It is difficult, it's not easy, but the soul is something that can be nourished. It is something that can be trained, and it takes a little bit of willpower and struggle in order for us to become more conscious and aware of our prayers and make it more meaningful in terms of how it connects us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. With that, we will end this session. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.